the number one thing you have to do to be successful at anything is be willing to fail in front of people. And I realize that a lot of people are okay with failure if they can do it in the privacy of their bedroom. Oh, yeah, well, I'm going to learn to become a singer, so I'm going to go into my room and close the door and sing. But I don't think you will really grow into that skill until you do it in front of people.
Welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the show that is laser focused to inspire you to take action to start or to scale your side hustle income streams. I'm your host, Joan Posivy, author of The Way Success Works: How to Decide, Believe, and Begin to Live Your Best Life. My guest today is one of Fiverr's all-time earners, clocking in earnings of $2.7 million since he's been with the freelance services platform. Not bad for someone who, as a young pastor, wanted to grow his family, his ministry, but found himself 50 grand in debt and reaching for whatever side hustles he could find to help him generate cash flow. I caught up with Joan just before he was leaving for a 1-month vacation to talk about how he turned things around. Be sure to catch the wrap up at the end of the show, where I crystallize and recap the key takeaways to inspire your side hustle story. Now here is Joan.
First 5 or 6 years, I think we were in full-time ministry for 12, but the first 5 or 6 years we did just fine. But then we started having kids, and we really wanted, to raise our kids. And so my wife stopped working full-time, and we had a little baby, and I had to pick up more, and we got into a new church, a young church situation where there wasn't a lot of funding. And that's where my side hustle journey really began, because it was out of necessity that I needed to have 4 or 5 different things I did on the side. So, pastor by day, substitute teacher by night sometimes. Well, I mean, during the day.
Sure.
I was substitute teaching. I was designing logos. I was building websites. I was basically doing anything anyone would let me do for money. I was painting sometimes, tried to start a little painting company. It's just anything I could do to hustle and keep that dream of building this new church going. And, it never really bothered me that we didn't have a lot of money until we started falling deeply into debt. And that was kind of, after the birth of our second son, that was when it really started to build up. We started, without even thinking about it, letting the balance on the credit card ride. And, we weren't extravagant people, but, just everyday expenses just started riding on the credit card. And, then it just became kind of a natural thing until eventually that church ended up closing down because of lack of funding and lots of different reasons. But it took us to a new situation where financially we were better taken care of, but we still were carrying around that debt. We still had it. And that was when we started to say, okay, how do we get out of that? And that was really, honestly, the motivator for my side hustles all the way through ministry, was that it was a necessity either to survive or to get out of this giant hole we had made for ourselves with our debt. So it was never that like, I've got to have something else to keep me interested or something else to keep me alive, because ministry was more than enough to keep me occupied and interested. And my passion was there. But when we made a big mess with our debt, we knew we had to do something more.
And to your point about giving up something, it's also, I find, all how we look at it. So, for example, I look at it not as giving up something, but rather I'm trading this thing of a lower nature to receive something of a higher nature.
Exactly. Yeah.
So rather than having those X number of lattes per week, I would much rather take that money and put it towards something that is going to cause me to be more financially free.
Absolutely.
So then it's not I'm losing out, I'm gaining.
100%. My wife and I used to do that a lot with giving in the early days when we didn't have a whole lot. I remember one thing we were really convicted by before we adopted a child of our own was that we wanted to help children in another country that didn't have the benefits that kids in America did, through a company or an organization called Compassion International. And the way we figured that out, how to afford that, was I think it was something like $35 a month. And we said that's a dinner out a month that we skip. And when we skip that enables us to put that money over there now. And like you said, it's a trade. is it worth the trade? Well, for that kid, it is. And so, yeah,
That's life changing.
we've always tried to frame things in that light. What am I willing to trade? And if it's not an equal trade, we don't do it. You know, if I wanted to drive a more expensive car, what would I have to trade? Well, you know, I oftentimes choose not to do those things, because these days trading that means time with my kids and time with my wife, and
right.
you know, so it's all a balance. Every stage of life, there's a different balance. What am I willing to trade? And obviously, getting things going, I traded a lot to get where I am today, and now I'm trying to enjoy it more.
Because creating those side hustles certainly takes time initially, but I mean, you want to get to the point where they're running themselves ideally. How did you end up choosing to do voiceovers? Because I understand that turned out to be one of your most lucrative side hustles.
Yeah, you know, voiceover is something that it's something that I would have never guessed that I would be in. I won't say that it's something I never would have guessed I'd be good at, because if you even talk to, you know, my mother, she would say, well, gosh, I could have picked that out when you were 7. I'm the kid that never shut up. I'm the kid that was always talking to strangers in the grocery store and working a deal with somebody I didn't know. You know, I was just kind of that kid that could talk and do things. And so it led me into the realm of public speaking and teaching and things like that I never had a fear of. But when it came to earning money on the side, it was actually my wife's suggestion. So I was in my younger days, I was a musician. I thought for sure that was going to be my career. And because of that, I had some littered musical equipment, recording gear. You know, this is back in around 2010, 2012, I think is when I started it. This is when, like, you could buy a decent microphone, you could buy an interface and plug it into your MacBook, and through GarageBand, you were going. And so my bands and I would record homemade EPs and things like that. And so I had this microphone that had been in my closet since I was 16 probably. And we actually purchased a voiceover on a website for a project at church that I could have done, but I said, people will know it's my voice. I want it to be different. And when we purchased it from her, my wife's first reaction, I was so impressed. And her reaction was, I think you could do that better. And I said, nice. Well, maybe I could, but I don't want it to be my voice. And she said, no, I think you could do what she's doing. And so I popped it open. She's like, well, how much does this girl make? And we started doing the math. Well, she sells them for this much. And she does, look how many she has in her queue right now. You know, gosh, she's doing 30, 40 of these a month. We were doing the math and we went, boy, if you could do that, that would be life-changing. And the first thought was, hey, let's not pay off our debt with this. That was too lofty. We were thinking, like, let's pay for our groceries with this.
That would be a great start. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like something smaller. I actually think we started smaller. I think at first it was the cable bill, which if we were smart, we would have cut cable altogether. But it was like, let's make like $50 or $100 a month. And so I dusted off that old microphone. I plugged it into my computer, and I didn't even have a sound booth. I would go in my closet, like between the shirts where it was quiet, and, you know, like running a cord in there. And I was holding, I think at the time I was holding an iPhone with my scripts on it, and with absolutely no experience, no know-how, and almost no technical knowledge. I was, you know, capable, but not really a guru. I started doing voiceovers, and I mean, listening back, I had zero idea what I was doing. I was cheesy. I was like, you know, a 1950s radio announcer. I thought that was what everybody wanted. But thankfully, I started at a place where the people that I was serving, where that was good enough for them. And, you know, that's one thing that I try to tell people all the time is you may think, well, I have a skill, but I'm not that good at it. The truth is, when you're not that good, your prices are lower. And even if you're not, quote, that good, you're good enough for somebody. You're exactly what somebody needs. And at the time, somebody needed a guy they could pay $10 to who'd record a phone message for them.
And you're stepping out, you're taking action, you're getting that experience,
exactly.
And so you probably saw, I mean, you look back and you go, oh my gosh, did I really sound like that? But then as you listen to your recordings, as they transition through the years, it becomes so much more polished, more experience, you know, and then you get to the point where you feel this confidence, because pretty much now, I would imagine recording, Joel, pretty much anything that could go wrong has gone wrong for you.
Sure.
So, I mean, you deal with it in the moment and you're that much more confident. And that part when you said that you really weren't that good, you didn't know what you were doing, I almost feel like looping that and playing that a couple of times in this show, because so many people want to be able to just do it perfectly before they step out and act.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always going to be your first show, your first gig, whatever it is. The key is just to get out there and do it. And I mean, look where it's led you. So that's
being a musician will teach you that, because the first shows you get to play are in front of nobody. I can remember playing a New Year's Eve show that was supposed to be huge, and the only two people in the audience were my wife. At the time, she was my girlfriend, and my brother's wife, who at the time was his girlfriend. And so when you get used to saying, I'm going to do this, whether anybody watches or whether anybody likes it now, because that's knowing that's the only way to get from where you are to where you want to be. It's a lot like any other skill you learn. If you're not willing to stink at something, you're never going to be great at anything. And so that's maybe that's a cultural thing that we pick up, that we're too worried about looking foolish in front of people, because everything's recorded, right? Every record of all our mistakes, the bad pictures we took, they're all on the internet for people to see 20 years down the road. And we don't want to be laughed at. But the truth is, you can try your best to do everything perfectly, but you're not perfect, and people are still going to make fun of your outfit in 30 years. It doesn't matter how good you look today. So,
but you're stepping out and doing it and getting the results. And then the others that are criticizing that, they can sit back and not get the results and just complain and wonder why they're not getting the results that you are. So 100%. You've got to step out. And I love the fact that, I guess it was almost like a little bit of a brainstorming session with your wife, it sounds like, that encouraged you to go forward. And so sometimes people, and you tell me if you agree with this, they have a certain skill in something, but they don't see it in themselves. It takes someone external, say like your wife, saying to you, you could do this better. Well, yeah, maybe I could.
Oh, yeah. I think I just kind of think that sometimes the people around us see the things that we don't. And I've actually talked to my wife quite a bit about this, where if it's not clear, like everything we try to be as much of a team as we possibly can be. When I was younger and dumber, I used to think I was in charge, and I made some stupid decisions for the both of us when we've been married. Oh gosh, almost 20 years now. But in the early days, I thought it'll be best for us if I take control and lead. And then I realized real leadership looks like us doing these things together. But it's funny how many things that if I just asked her, she could sit down and tell me, here's what you're good at and here's what you're not good at. And sometimes the things on the not good at list are things I thought I was doing well. And I've had to learn to listen to people around me to say, you should be doing this. You should be doing that. Why are you focusing over here when you could be focusing on that? And oftentimes those are things we don't think of. We're just, and we're so blinded to our abilities, because this is interesting. I read a book about this probably 4 or 5 years ago. There's a curse on our abilities, meaning that when we're good at something, we think everybody's good at it. Like, for instance, I could say, voiceover work. I'm the king of thinking that something I can do is super easy, like public speaking. And my wife is always the first to say, that is not easy. People do not like that. And that's a gift. But the truth is, because I'm good at it, I think it's no big deal. Why would anybody pay me to read this script? I'm just talking into a microphone. Why would anybody pay for this?
Anybody could do that.
Anybody could do that. And it's because I know how to do it. And it's easy for me. And it's second nature for me that I think it's a worthless skill. But the truth is, anybody without that skill looks at it like it's gold.
Absolutely.
I would give anything to be able to do that. So, I think that's a big block for people. They look at what they're good at and think, well, why would anybody pay for that? Surely everybody's good at that, right? No, it's not true.
I found that to be an enlightening exercise. There was a week-long intensive event that I was involved in, and as part of the homework leading up to it, we had to ask 3 people in our lives basically that. How do you perceive my skills, my strong points, and what you perceive my weaknesses to be? Now, be honest, because this is going to be helpful.
Scary exercise.
Yeah, it's quite,
Be
Yeah,
careful. Make sure you're ready for that.
I chose those three people wisely for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Mm,
You
yeah.
need to. I think that we get stuck in caring about everybody's opinion.
Mhm.
The truth is, everybody's opinion does not matter, and only the specific people who have earned that trust and that right in your life should speak into that. But even with those people around, we often find it hard to listen to them. And I'm sure that set me behind several years that I could have been running full force at in a certain direction if I'd have only asked those questions. But everything happens in its own timing.
Absolutely. And it's all a learning experience. One of the things that really impressed me with your story is your ability to focus your thinking on what it is that you want to achieve and just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. And I tell people all the time that I started a business on accident, and it's not as though I'm a haphazard thinker or I'm not intentional about what I'm doing. But the fact is, I got here by putting one foot in front of the other. And I didn't plan to be where I am today. I simply took the opportunities that were in front of me. In the beginning, that was recording voiceovers in the corner of my bedroom for an hour a night. And that hour grew to 2 or 3 hours. And then I started doing a few things with video, and that grew to 4 or 5 hours. And before I knew it, I was up till 2 a.m. almost every morning doing a side job. And in 18 months, that side job, or actually, we'll go back a little farther. In 12 months, that side job expanded to the spare bedroom. I put my two boys in one bedroom and took over the other one as a studio. And then in 18 months,
nice.
All the debt was paid off. And the cool thing is, none of that was planned. All of it was just progressive, one step in front of the other. Take the next right opportunity in front of you and do it without any expectation, without any, pressure. That's the one thing I hear people talk about all the time when they look at, oh, maybe it's a side hustle, maybe it's starting a business. They feel this pressure. And the truth is, that's all self-imposed. You don't have to feel pressure.
Absolutely.
You just have to try something. And that's why having a side hustle is so cool, is it takes the pressure off. It gives you time to get things, as Dave Ramsey says, get the boat closer to the dock so you don't fall in the water when you make the jump. I think that's a really great analogy that
Love it.
Side hustles help us do. They help us to test the waters and say, can I get close enough to this goal where one day I could jump? And that's what we did. After 18 months, we looked around. I was making more on the side than I was during 9 to 5. We had an opportunity to move from Miami, Florida back to Ohio to be closer to family with these two little babies we had. And it was kind of like, the timing was there. It felt like we'd been handed this, but really we had earned it over a series of small steps.
And to your point, you didn't know how it was going to play out. You didn't know how to do all these things in the beginning, but you took the first step. I love that saying, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just the first step.
Yeah.
Take it. It's like, go as far as you can see. And when you get there, you'll see how to go further, the
100%.
next step and the next step. And eventually the way will be shown. And so
Exactly.
You had a lot of steps. You've had a lot of growth from those voiceover days. What's happening for you today?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey for me personally. And the reason I enjoyed side hustling was because I really like doing things on my own. I like things only depending on me. And maybe that's something I need to work on. But I kind of like the idea that, hey, I'm in charge of my own destiny. Nobody's going to do this for me. If I, work hard, work extra, I'm going to see the fruit of that. And if I'm lazy and I don't do anything this month, I'm also going to be the one to be responsible for that. And so I enjoyed doing that for probably 3, maybe 4 years. And until I was working, 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week on my own. And I said, one of two things needs to happen. I either need to totally scale back this operation and just quit accepting extra work, or I need to expand. And even though I enjoyed being on my own, I liked the idea of beginning to expand what was at first just me into something else. And so I hired my first assistant, and she came in and helped me with communication, some organization, things that I could easily train quickly. She took 20 hours a week off of my table and off my plate. And I just said, oh, this is nice. Well, then the business grew again, and I was working those ridiculous hours. I remember in those days I would go to bed at midnight and get up at 5, and that's pretty much my whole day. And then I said, okay, do I want to scale back, or do I want to add a person? And then I added another creative to work with me, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And today there's a group of 6 of us. We're called Jumpstart Video. Our real main goal is to really mix all the skills that I built for myself that I've been able to train other people in, which are mainly surrounding marketing, advertising, content creation. We do animation videos, but we also we have a team of voice actors that I lead. We have a team of creatives that I lead. We have some really great project managers. Like I said, I work with my older brother. It's really cool. We get to run this together. And it's just been something that I never would have expected to have. And even still, I don't look at it as something I have. I look at it as something I'm a part of. I get to be a part of. And it's so cool for me that now, instead of it just being me in my bedroom late at night, this is a real legitimate business that is helping and supporting people and giving them the opportunity to work in a way that's cool for them. Because, before COVID made it popular, we were all working remotely. We were all working in our homes. I've been working from home for over a decade. And I think that's a really unique freedom to have. And this business, before everybody started doing it, this business gave my team members a way to do that. So yeah, we just have a lot of fun and try to keep each other positive and sane and support each other. And these days I look at my job less about creating and more about supporting the creatives that I've put on my team and trying to figure out how can I make their lives better while also making my life better. How can we support each other in that? Because it's a really symbiotic relationship when you're in a team and trying to lead a team. They all make my life better, and in turn I'm trying to make their lives better by supporting the work that they're doing. And meanwhile, there's just a lot of moments where you just look back and go, how did we get here?
How did this happen?
How did we do it about 10 times a year? My wife and I just stop and go, what the heck? How did this happen?
I just had this flash of, you back in your closet recording that first voiceover, with your phone to, where you are today with this very creative team in this wonderful upward spiral. And that's one of the I think lovely things about stepping out and taking action. You don't know where it's going to lead. Like, could you have envisioned in that closet that you'd be doing what you're doing today?
No. And I'm telling you, if I came out of that closet with the idea that, this is what I'm going to do, I would have found a way to screw it up. Like any vision that I've ever had for my future I've always managed to mess it up. But the best things that have happened to me in life are the things that came to me as a result of just being faithful with what I had, doing what I knew I could do, and seeing where it takes me. So yeah, I mean, I've had inventions that I've got a notebook full of inventions and weird things that I tried to do. Every single one of them spiraled and failed. But the one thing that I just kind of let happen has been the most successful thing of my working life.
Now, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you and your Jumpstart Video company?
Yeah, so we're at jumpstartvideo.net. We're on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube a lot. We put out a lot of really cool content about video marketing. So if you're looking into do video marketing, even doing it yourself, check out our YouTube channel. We can help you do that better. Even if you don't hire us to do it for you, we just want to help. I still do a lot of independent freelance voice acting. That's joelyoung.me. My portfolio and samples are there. And I also have a YouTube channel. It's called Joel Talks. It's youtube.com/Joel Talks, where I just try to share information that I've learned over the last 10 years with people. I've had my business going for 10 years, but I've been freelancing for about 20. And so just kind of sharing my experience, not pretending that I'm an expert in any of this, but just sharing my experience with people is something that has proven not only to be helpful for them, but it's helpful for me. It's kind of it's a process. It's kind of like therapy for me to sit in front of a camera and say, wow, you're never going to believe what happened this week. And after 20 years of freelancing, this is new still even for me. And we can commiserate with each other. We can, in the comment section, we get into the life and the ups and the downs of a freelancer and a side hustler. And I realized that that's how most great businesses start, in somebody's garage or in your mom's basement or in the corner of your bedroom, like me. So,
I've checked out a number of those videos. It's like really content rich, really helpful. And I'll be sure to include all those links in our show notes so people know where to find you and all that valuable content. In our remaining moments, I do want to ask you a couple more questions, Joel. It often is the start that stops most people. It's finding the courage to take that one initial step. What's your best tip for helping people step out and take action?
Well, I think the number one thing you have to do to be successful at anything is be willing to fail in front of people. And I realize that a lot of people are okay with failure if they can do it in the privacy of their bedroom. I'm going to learn to become a singer. So I'm going to go into my room and close the door and sing. But I don't think you will really grow into that skill until you do it in front of people. And I think that's important to learn is something I try to build into my kids is you need to learn to fail in front of people and not be embarrassed by it, because I have done so many embarrassing things in my life that I'm at the point, I'm almost 40 years old. I'm at the point now where embarrassment does nothing to me. I think I've gotten it out of my system. I've been so brash and foolish in my younger years that it just doesn't bother me. And yet I know a lot of 40-year-olds that die of embarrassment every time something even mildly shocking happens to them in front of people. And I think that's a skill that we need to build into ourselves, that we're not afraid to fail in front of people. In fact, we welcome it. We see failure as a learning opportunity. That's just the only way to get good at something. It's the only way to be okay with what the next step is, because sometimes failure is your indicator that you're not going in the right direction. That, okay, I'm no good at this and I'm not getting better. I've been doing this for a year and I'm not improving. I need to pick something else. Or failure's the indicator that, I have gotten better. Look back 3 months at how bad I was. Look where I am now. And so every time we do something in front of people, public, whether it's on an Instagram story or on a YouTube channel, or you're doing it face to face with your friends and family, failure's the only way to know if you're going in the right direction.
Yeah. And oftentimes it causes a person to take a path down another road that leads to something even greater. But had they not stepped out of their bedroom and just singing there, they would have never been exposed to that other person or that idea that leads them to the next step.
And that's a part of my story that we haven't even gotten into, and the fact that I never started out creating animated videos. That was a pivot 6 years in. I thought voiceover was going to be the future of my business and all that, but then I realized I'm only one person, and when my voice isn't coming out of my mouth, then I'm not making money. And the only way to build a legitimate business is to build it around things that aren't centered on my face and my voice. And so that was a pivot at some point where I said, you know what? I've never done that before. People are asking for it. All these things just happen, and one thing led to another, and it's a skill that I learned. And now it's 90% of what I do in a day. So yeah.
I appreciate you, Joel, sharing your wisdom and insight today on the show. And thank you for being today's Side Hustle Hero.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joan. Good to be here.
Before you go, I want to drive home 3 key takeaways from my conversation with Joel. Number 1, he said he did anything he could to hustle, to bring in money, to keep the dream alive. Some of those ventures didn't work out. Please don't look at a hustle that didn't pan out for you as a failure. Rather, treat it as a learning experience. That's not just cliche, and maybe you've heard that before, but ask yourself, what would you do differently next time? Maybe it wasn't a fit for your skills or your passions. Maybe it caused you to be stuck in front of a computer for endless hours, and that's just not you. You're more of a MacGyver type that can fix anything, and you'd be much happier scouring flea markets and garage sales to buy low, fix and resell stuff. These learning experiences we have provide us deeper insights as to what we want and what we don't want. Number 2, if you find you have to give up something to be working on your side hustle, instead of viewing it as the loss of something, a much more empowering stance is to do this. A, keep in mind you are at choice. Therefore, B, you're choosing to work on the side hustle in lieu of this other thing. So it's a trade. You're letting go of something of a lower nature to receive something of a higher nature. Earlier, I used the example of skipping a couple of lattes a week. That example popped into mind because I recall making that exact trade many, many times. Years ago, I decided that I would become financially free. To me, that means there's enough passive income coming in to pay for my lifestyle so that I'm working because I want to, not because I have to. To accomplish that, one of the things I did was take a look at where I was spending my money and assess the wisdom of those spends. That gave me the ability to then make a conscious choice to forego the lattes and instead put that money in my financial freedom fund, because watching that grow was way cool and the lack of a latte was soon forgotten. But yeah, full disclosure, some days I opted for and needed the double espresso. But remember, it's a trade. And number 3, you've got to start where you're at. Of course, you'll do the necessary prep work that your side hustle requires. You'll study and practice and gain advice from mentors, whatever it is you need to do. But there's a point where you've got to get out there and execute. You're not going to do things perfectly or operate at your full potential first time out. If you try to wait until you think you're perfect, you'll never execute. When you watch any pro doing their job, remember that there was a first time for them too. But they kept putting themselves out there and practicing their craft until, over time, they earned pro status. Joel mentioned that public speaking came easy to him. It was the exact opposite for me. At the beginning of my career in delivering keynote presentations and seminars, I was terrified. I mean, absolutely terrified. But I wanted so much to share the content of what I was teaching, I had to persevere. I actually video recorded one of my early presentations for the sole purpose of being able to review it after as a training for me. And seriously, I was horrified at what I saw. My performance was so bad. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I never did. I had seen enough. The short clip I did watch gave me lots to work on. So get out there and just do. Well, that's a wrap for this week. You'll find the links we mentioned and the show notes on our website, sidehustleheropodcast.com. Again, sidehustleheropodcast.com. And I'd love to hear your feedback on the show, on the guests, how this podcast is helping you. What areas could we do better? Shoot me an email message to hello@joanposivy.com or by Instagram @JoanPosivy. Thanks for listening and happy hustling.